The Winter Guest is a 2022 historical crime novel by W.C. Ryan. It's set 100 years ago in 1921 in civil war ravaged Northern Ireland, where a battle rages between Catholic nationalists and English Protestants who want to claim ownership of Northern Ireland. We are thrown into the middle of an ambush by a group of rebels who are sent to shoot a car full of people on their way to Kilcolgan House, a once glorious, now run-down house on the outskirts of a town. When a young lady called Maud gets caught in the crossfire of the ambush and is killed, her old fiancé, Tom Harkin, is deployed to investigate the circumstances of her death. The thing is, though, Tom isn't a detective or even a cop. He works for an insurance company for which Maud's life was insured, and more importantly, this company is a front for a rebel organisation in Dublin. The story is in the typical whodunit style, but with the added intrigue of the events going on in Ireland as well. It feels well fleshed out in terms of world building, not just the basic style of everyone being in a room and we have to figure out who the guilty one is. However, this story has some major shortfalls to do with depth, clarity, and most importantly, not enough ghosts. You may wonder why I mention ghosts, as this was advertised as a classic historical crime novel. But the outline on the back of the book mentioned ghosts, as if they were going to be an integral part of the plot. And that's what led me to want to read the book in the first place. There were some ghosts, but not in the way I expected, and their presence was never fully explained, other than they exist. This could only be forgiven as we are seeing it from Tom Harkin's perspective, a man who has some major war-related trauma and sees apparitions of his own. Maybe he was struggling to figure out if these ghosts were real, or merely another part of his imagination. But when the book is described as haunting on official websites, you'd hope to be getting a lot of boo for your buck. I can't really tell you what Tom's goal was, other than very generally to solve Maud's murder, but there wasn't enough internal conflict or stakes for Tom personally to root for him. There seemed to be a lack of emotional attachment from Tom about what was happening, and because of that, I struggled to feel a connection to him. Tom's behaviour could be explained by his numbness to tragedy because of the war, and also a staunchness of character. But even if he was pushing the emotion down to appear outwardly strong, there was a lack of internal emotion for the loss of a girl he had once loved deeply. Maybe it's because the book I read before this one was a teenage fantasy, where every emotion is surface level, but Tom's pain seemed hidden and less important to the story. The first time I felt Tom showed any true emotion is when he begins seeing a lady called Moira, who seems to ground him and make him feel safe during the investigation. Because this was a touching relationship, and because of where the story ends up, I would have liked to have seen it have a more prominent role in the story, to contrast the doom and gloom, and for the reader to feel that Tom was able to feel emotions. But it wasn't only Tom who acted oddly in regards to Maud's death. Her entire family, her father, brother, and sister all seemed nonchalant and almost unaffected by the death of their sister. At first, I thought this was so that we didn't know whether they were involved with the murder. But when it was revealed that they had no part in it, I wondered why they hardly seemed to care that she'd died. With Maud's death being the main reason for Tom travelling to Kilcolgan House, I expected to learn more about her as a person too, and the connection between her and Tom and the relationship they had shared. But it never happened, and I was left wanting more. With such an important Irish event going on throughout the story, I found it hard to keep up with the characters and where their loyalties lay. But maybe that was the point in some aspects. Since there were so many characters who were part of different groups, it would have been helpful to reinforce the meaning of each group for someone like me with a very basic understanding of the conflict. As I read this story, and clearly in the content of this review, I made excuses for the author. But I shouldn't have to make excuses for an author that can be found on the shelves of Whitcoulls. I shouldn't close a book for a final time wondering whether things the author wrote were intentional or not. In some cases, that may work, but not under these circumstances. It all felt like good luck that these things lined up enough for me to give the author the benefit of the doubt that it was all done on purpose, In spite of all this, I did read the story quite quickly. Most chapters had a clear focus on investigating or questioning a person and moved the plot forward. Often speaking to one person would lead him to wanting to speak to another, so there was a nice flow. It may be because I haven't read a lot of crime novels, but I didn't read this book expecting anything in particular, except a few twists and a big reveal, as almost seemed a requirement of the genre. But towards the end, I really had to drag myself through because I'd already figured out the circumstances around Maud's death a few chapters before. I give this book 3 stars. If I hadn't managed to finish it, and I felt the things I've mentioned were inexcusable, I would have rated it lower. But I did get through it, so even though it annoyed me, it didn't stop me making it to the end. If you're into crime or historical novels or both, this may be one for you. However, read it with an open mind and don't think too hard about the intentions of the author to portray certain ideas or themes. And don't expect too many ghosts. Thanks for watching.